Okay, so today we're gonna talk about what's in an egg.
The egg yolk and the egg white. And are brown eggs better or healthier than white eggs? The answer is no.
You've probably scrolled past a video exactly like that. One creator swearing eggs are wrecking your arteries, another calling them a superfood, a third telling you to toss the yolk and just eat the whites. 3 different verdicts, same egg. Here's the strange part. American health guidance has flip-flopped on this, for real, in writing. By the late 1960s, the American Heart Association had settled on a cap of 3 eggs a week, or you were gambling with your heart. Today, the FDA has rewritten the rules for the word healthy on food labels, and eggs made the list. So which one of those videos is right on? Or is the real story something none of them bothered to tell you? Back then, the concern wasn't really about eggs at all. It was about fat in general, something cardiologists were only just beginning to seriously study. By the late 1950s, the American Heart Association had already started blaming saturated fat for clogging arteries in its early research, and within a few years, that became official advice: cut back, under a doctor's watch. Notice what's still missing: no cholesterol number, no egg count. That came later. By the late 1960s, the AHA had settled on a hard line: keep dietary cholesterol under 300 milligrams a day. Cap whole eggs at 3 a week. One egg carries around 186 milligrams on its own, so that number basically meant watch your eggs more than anything else on your plate. And there's something that rarely gets mentioned. Researchers who've gone back and looked at how the AHA landed on exactly 300 milligrams have called the reasoning behind that figure something close to a mystery. It wasn't pulled from one definitive study. It was closer to a judgment call, dressed up as a hard limit. That didn't stop it from becoming policy. Within a decade, the same number got folded into federal guidelines, printed on pamphlets in doctors' offices nationwide, treated like settled science. Turns out, neither video had it. Because years before this was ever a YouTube debate, the institution most associated with the egg villain era was already quietly backing away from its own number. From the inside, nobody outside cardiology circles even noticed. By the early 2000s, the AHA quietly dropped its specific 3 to 4 eggs a week language. The cap stayed on paper, but the egg counting stopped being the headline. Then, in a joint report with the American College of Cardiology, they admitted something bigger. In their own words, there was insufficient evidence that lowering dietary cholesterol actually lowered your LDL, the number your doctor watches. Read that again. The organization that built the egg limit was now saying, on the record, that it wasn't sure cutting dietary cholesterol did what it had told everyone for over a decade. If you've ever watched someone scrape a yolk into the trash and eat just the white, that habit didn't come from nowhere. It came from exactly this number, quietly living on for years after the people who wrote it had started doubting it themselves. Then the dam actually broke. In December 2014, the federal government's own Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee reviewed the evidence and reached a striking conclusion. Cholesterol, they wrote, is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. Not lower it, not watch it, not a concern. This isn't some wellness blog opinion. It's the actual federal review process that sets national nutrition policy. 13 months later, in January 2016, that finding became official. The 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines quietly removed the 300 milligram cap entirely. 48 years after the AHA drew that line, the government erased it. No press conference, no line of explanation, just gone from the new edition. Sit with that for a second. This wasn't new data about eggs. Nobody ran a groundbreaking study that suddenly proved eggs were safe. What changed wasn't one single fact. It was newer research methods, a shift toward looking at whole dietary patterns instead of one nutrient at a time, and a simplified assumption underneath all of it, that cholesterol you eat converts almost directly into cholesterol in your blood, a cleaner picture than the biology actually supports. Together, that's what quietly got retired. The eggs didn't change. The model explaining them did. Okay, so if it wasn't new proof that eggs are harmless, what was it? Turns out the real answer isn't about eggs at all. It's about what your body does with saturated fat, and once you see that, you understand why that late 1960s number came from an understanding of risk that just wasn't sophisticated enough yet. So what's the mechanism, the thing that actually explains why a 50-year-old rule finally cracked? Dietary cholesterol, the kind sitting inside an egg yolk, has a fairly modest effect on the cholesterol circulating in most people's blood, smaller than researchers once assumed. Saturated fat, on the other hand, tends to push your liver toward making more LDL cholesterol on its own. That's the shift underneath all of this. Dietary cholesterol didn't get proven harmless. The concern just moved toward a bigger driver, which is also part of why just eat the egg whites was never quite the fix people assumed. The cholesterol sits mostly in the yolk, but the yolk isn't the piece the newer research is most worried about. One 2025 clinical trial out of the University of South Australia tested this directly. Participants ate 2 eggs a day inside a diet that was genuinely low in saturated fat. After 5 weeks, their LDL had gone down, not despite the eggs, alongside a diet that had dealt with the bigger driver. It's a single trial, not a verdict on its own, but it points the same direction as the bigger studies. And that tracks with one of the largest population studies on this question, a 2020 Harvard-led analysis following over 215,000 people for decades, plus a meta-analysis covering 1.7 million more. Up to 1 egg a day, no meaningful association with heart disease risk. This isn't a tip from a supplement ad. It's one of the largest datasets that exists specifically on egg consumption. But, and this matters, that study specifically excluded anyone who already had type 2 diabetes, heart disease, or cancer at the start. It's a finding about the general population. It was never a finding about everyone. Which raises an uncomfortable follow-up. If that first oversimplification just got corrected, what happens when you ask who the correction doesn't cover? A 2024 scoping review found something genuinely unresolved. American studies tracking people with type 2 diabetes keep finding higher egg intake associated with higher cardiovascular risk. An association, not a proven cause. European studies asking the same question don't find that same link. Nobody's hiding this. It's an open contradiction sitting in the research right now, which is exactly why the American Heart Association's current guidance doesn't say, eat freely. It says keep dietary cholesterol as low as possible without compromising nutritional adequacy. And for most healthy adults, about 1 egg a day fits that. So how did policy actually handle a story with that kind of open edge? In December 2024, the FDA finalized new rules for the word healthy on food labels, and eggs made the list, citing changes in nutrition science and dietary recommendations. The reversal that started as a quiet line item removal in 2016 had become a formal federal stamp, and it's held. The newest 2025-2030 dietary guidelines, out this year, still list eggs as a recommended protein source alongside other whole foods. No cholesterol cap has been reinstated, and no blanket safe for everyone claim has replaced it either. That's not federal indecision. That's policy trying to hold 2 true things at once. Safe for most people, still an open question for people managing diabetes. But it's worth a beat of honesty here. Those same new guidelines have drawn public criticism. Harvard nutrition researcher Dr. Frank Hu has said the guidelines' own visual materials lean into high saturated fat foods in ways he thinks could really confuse people. And saturated fat is the exact variable this whole story just spent 8 minutes unpacking. Kind of ironic, honestly. You finally fix the message on eggs, then hand people a picture that muddies the actual culprit. It's not a criticism of eggs specifically. An egg carton in your fridge right now is quietly carrying almost 60 years of institutional back and forth on it, and none of that history is printed anywhere on the box. So here's where this lands. The eggs didn't change. The model explaining them did. That's good news for most people, though if you or someone you love is managing type 2 diabetes, this nuance is worth an actual conversation with a doctor, not a headline. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice, but knowing that question is something you can walk into that conversation with today. Don't just watch for eggs are safe or eggs are dangerous anymore. Watch for what the guidance actually says is driving the risk, and ask what other decades-old numbers are still sitting in your kitchen, unquestioned. If this changed how you look at the carton in your own fridge, that's exactly the kind of quiet correction Health Evolution TV exists to dig up.